Let us start the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. Will someone please remind us what page we are on for today?
156, I think.
Bhante, we stopped at 159, the great object, that number 7 thing.
Yeah,
That's right,
where we
Devika.
stopped.
That's
159, the great object.
Object, yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
that's where we stopped.
That's where we stopped, correct.
All right.
Can we just put this number after this? Can we?
All right. Page number 159, the great objects. The object is called great when it enters the avenue of sense after having passed a few moments and is unable to survive till the arising of the registration movements. So that is a clear differentiation between the great object and the other, right? And the other objects to come. We spoke about this in last week's class when we spoke about the importance of the determination of the power of the object and the circumstances of the chittaviti when it comes to its connection to the arising of the tadalambana or the registration consciousness or the registration consciousness. The object is called great when it enters the avenue of sense after having passed and is unable to survive till the arising of the registration mind movements. The registration mind movements. In that case, at the end of the jhavanas, there is subsidence into the life continuum and no arising of the registration consciousness. And no arising of the registration consciousness. Let us turn to page number 161, please. In page number 161, the very great object which we have already done with regards to the eye consciousness or the Chakkudwara Chittaviti or Chakkudwara Viti. Now we are in the stance of the great object. Now within the great object, it is clear, we see there is the bhavanga, it begins with the same, it begins with the bhavanga going into having two past bhavangas, meaning, what does that mean? The object is not powerful enough, therefore there are two vibrations of past bhavanga up until its maturation, where then it will move on with the rest of the process. Because of that delay, the chittaviti experiences or is unable to experience the tadalambana or the registration process, where then right after the jhavana, what happens is it subsidizes into or goes into the bhavanga process again, right? Into the bhavanga process again. Back to page number 159. Guide to para 7. The object is called great, etc. In this kind of cognitive process, after the object has arisen, 2 or 3 atita bhavanga chittas pass before its impact causes the bhavanga to vibrate, right? Causes the bhavanga to vibrate. Since the object and the sense door can only endure For 17 mind moments, this process does not give any scope for the registration chittas to arise, does not give any scope for the registration consciousness to arise. Right? Does not give any scope for the consciousnesses to arise. Registration cannot occur even when there are two Atita Bhavangas, since registration occurs either for two mind moments or not at all. Right? It must arise for two mind moments or not at all. That is why we see that because there is a delay of one Chittakana from the beginning, after the Javana, we don't see one Tadalambana rising. Both of the Tadalambanas are missing and it goes directly into the past Bhavanga. I'm sorry, the Bhavanga. Now, when there are two Atita Bhavanga Chittas, 15 more Chittas can arise during the lifespan of the object. In such a case, both the object and the sense door perish simultaneously, with the dissolution moment of the first Bhavanga Chitta following the Javana phase. When there are three Atita Bhavanga Chittas, the scope remains for 14 more Chittas to arise, for 14 more Chittas to arise. And in this case, the sense object and sense door perish simultaneously with the last Javana Chitta. This kind of cognitive process is also called a Javanavara, a course ending with Javana, right? A course ending with Javana. Now, let us go back to page number 161, please. Let us make ourselves clear. Please, let's look at the Chittaviti, the first Chittaviti, which is the very great object. The very great object can depend, or an object being called or being a very great object can depend on what, is my question to you. What can it depend on? Can I, if you have something to say, if you just say, put your hand up on signal to me. Noeline, yes.
Sorry, no, Bhante, what's the question again?
The question is, what what determines the object being very great? Or what determines the power of the object?
The number of chittas, that it starts from the very first 5-door adverting and goes up to the second registration. It covers all the chittas.
True. But what does that process depend on? Yes, Padma.
Is it on the impact of the object?
The impact of the object. Yes, I mean, the power of the object is the impact of the object, in other words. So
Okay.
what does that impact depend on?
It doesn't need to mature so much. So the bhavangas, it doesn't need so many bhavangas for it to get it to mature, to get the chalana bhava, not to arrest the bhavanga. Sorry.
Okay, let's listen to what others. Miri.
Can I try?
The consciousness and how it has impacted on the consciousnesses, because it can be a very strong object, but it may not, if the consciousness is not directed towards it, it can not be a very great object.
Attention.
So the attention and the consciousness.
Bhante, can I say something? The eye sensitivity, the visible object, the aloka, and the attention, the manasikara, the four things. The Chakupada, Ruparana, Aloka, and the Manasikara.
Not really. Susan?
Can I try?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I think it depends on the Sankara, the fourth and the fifth Sankara, mental construct and consciousness.
No.
I would start with my daughter's intention
Who's whoever has that thing running in the background? All right. So, anyone else? Mana?
It depends on the attention you give on the object.
Okay, what does the attention depend on?
Visibility,
Yes.
light,
Okay, visibility.
the light.
Okay, so now we have light. Now I have light all over this room, right? I have light all over this room. Now, does that mean that each and every object in this room is then a Atimahanta Ramana, or a very great object?
You have to force your attention on it.
Okay, so attention, attention is one. Last one has said familiarity, that is one again, yes. What else?
The eye sensitivity.
Eye sensitivity.
Sensitivity for the object.
Eye sensitivity for the object. Well, we are not talking about the eye specifically. So the sensitivity.
Okay. Whatever object.
Yes, not, we are talking in general, right? So the pasada.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, that's the pasada.
Right. So
and the aloka and the manasikara, the attention and the light.
The attention, the light.
Right.
What other factors can affect?
And you get from the heart base, Swaminas, from the heart base, it arises.
Okay. So in that process of what depends or what leads to an object being a Atimahanta Ramana, this is determined by the first of all is the attention, right? The attention which is focused upon, a specific base, right? Not the object, the base. Now, because sometimes, now let's say, there are certain instances where all your focus might be put upon a certain goal. For example, the eye door. But there might be a sound which creates more of an impulse, right? Which creates more of an impulse than the sight which is seen. And now there's a shift of attention, right? So that shift of attention really is determined by the impulsions which are created through that specific object which appears to the base, right? To the base. Now, in a person who is then controlled and in a person who is uncontrolled. Now, these two words are used, controlled and uncontrolled, meaning a person with mental control. That kind of a person can determine where the attention of what that object is, but not all people can. For example, during time of jhana, what happens? Remember when Venerable Sariputta was meditating in Nirodha Samapatti, right? Where it is said that he was attacked. However, he did not feel the pressure of the attack. Why? Because of the Samadhi Chitta, right? So when it comes to the determination of why or how that object is, attention becomes a forerunner in that sense, right? But what gives rise to that attention is then the impulsion. What is the impulsion which is strong at that specific moment? If that impulsion is overtaken by something else, then there's a shift of attention from one object to the other, right? Because the samadhi is strong, then nothing else can sort of come to disturb that path of consciousness or path of attention, right? So Samantha has said past experience perception or past karma. Past karma is given as past karma is in the Visuddhimagga given as a factor which determines the strength that an object is taken by when speaking about meditational development. For example, with the Kasinas, it is said that people with past karma, past experience through karma, who have similar karmas in the past, are able to go deeper into the meditation object which is now practiced. That is because of past karma, right? So yes, Samantha, past karma can be a factor that leads to an object being very great or otherwise. So let's move on. Now, page number 161. We have the Bhavanga. We've gone through this, the Bhavanga, past Bhavanga, vibrational Bhavanga, arresting Bhavanga, the 5 sense door adverting eye consciousness, receiving, investigating, determining, the Javana processors, and the registration consciousnesses. The great object is then what we essentially do is we increase one past Bhavanga each row, right? One past Bhavanga with each row. So we know that there are 15 types of different Chitta Viti powers, right? So you increase one past Bhavanga, thus reducing the number from the end of the script. So that is a technique that we use to remember this, right? To remember this. We find the Bhavanga, the past Bhavanga vibrate, past Bhavanga being there twice, and then the vibrational Bhavanga, the resting Bhavanga, the 5 sense door, the eye consciousness, the receiving, investigating, determining, all 7 of the javanas, and then a Bhavanga going into the Bhavanga, right? The Bhavanga going into the Bhavanga. Then we have what we call the Javana Bara, which is a Chitta Viti ending in a Javana with a Javana Chitta. With a Javana Chitta. So that is, then again, we have the 7 Javanas there, but there is no Bhavanga. Just have this in your head and know how that process happens. It is wholly because the object, because of the weakness of its comprehension, takes longer for the initial processes to start. Thus, because of that reason, there is no, or the process, or the fullest process of its comprehension or Chitta Viti cannot take place, right? Coming back up. Paragraph 8, the slight object, page number 159. The object is called slight, 160. The object is called slight when it enters the avenue of sense after having passed and is unable to survive till the arising of the javanas. In that case, when the javanas do not arise, but the determining consciousness occurs for 2 or 3 moments, and then there is subsidence into life continuum, right? Do you understand this? The significance of the life continuum, the significance of the Javana role, the significance of the Tadalambana, leading to the comprehension of the object. Does anyone have a doubt? Meeri, your hand is up. Do you have anything to say?
No, sorry, I think that was just a mistake.
All right. All right.
Has he gone down?
No, I'll put it down.
Bhante, I sent a message on chat. Can you please read if my question is valid?
Yeah, isn't past experience karma part of aggregate which house the sankhara?
If I'm totally off the point, you can tell me I'm way off the point.
Well, it is a yes and a no, Susan, because now if we would take past karma, no, wait, let me see. Isn't past experience or karma part of the aggregate which houses sankhara? No, it is not. If we take, how can we say this?
It's okay. You don't have to explain. I just want to know if I'm really way off point.
No,
I'll take my time to learn slowly.
no, without explaining. Susan, no. Hold on. Isn't past experience or karma part of aggregate which houses sankhara? Well, it is like this. It is along the lines of the manifestation of karma. How does karma manifest? If it is past karma, how does past karma manifest? That is where your answer, if we are taking the answer in that sense, yes, it would then be a part of sankhara, right? But if we would take past karma just as past karma, then it would not be a part of sankhara. Do we understand?
I will in the future. It's okay. We can move on. I don't want to hold up everyone else.
It's like this. I've done a bad deed in the past. How it manifests as a akusala vipaka. When it manifests as a akusala vipaka of any category or type, then is it not a sankhara? It is. That is what I mean. If you are, do we understand that? Now, what is sankhara? What is the description of sankhara? Sankhara are the 89 or the 100. Okay, sankhara is a part of the, if we take according to the Abhidhamma, it is part of the 50, the Chaitasikas, the mental factors. The mental factors support the consciousnesses and the arising of the consciousnesses. In a Chittavritti process, the sankharas will exist in the Chittavritti process, right? Hence, past karma, when manifested, is a part of the sankharas. But if we talk about past karma as the energy before its manifestation, then it is not a part of the sankhara.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
When it now remember everyone, sankhara, if we are talking, there is a definition of sankhara which would, there are actually many different definitions of sankhara, many definitions of sankhara, but one of its most, one of the most widely used definitions is that all objects that arise and thus pass away is known as sankhara, right? Because of its impermanence. That is also known as sankhara. In Abhidhamma, we refer to sankhara as the Chaitasika Dhammas, right? Remember that at one moment, there is a cluster of sankharas, there is vinyana, which are the chittas. Remember, it is one present moment, isn't it? When it is existent, yes, it is a sankhara. But if it is not existent, it is not a sankhara. Why do you look so confused? It is such a simple point.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So what you say is, whenever you have a karma, so when it is about, or when it is already in the form of resultant, right? If a karma in the form of resultant is manifested, then it comes under sanskara.
Yes. Because
right.
we are speaking Dhammasiri with regard to Chittavritti.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
With regards to Chittavritti, it is a present moment experience, isn't it? The Chittavritti is a present moment experience. Then, for example, we can go into Punyabhi Sankhara, Apunyabhi Sankhara, Anenjabhi Sankhara.
Yeah.
In that case, yes, it is Sankhara.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right? It depends on what we are talking about. Right? It depends. So if you're talking about the Chittavrittis, then during the process or time of manifestation, it is a sankhara.
Okay.
It is a sankhara. It is as if now, for example, when a person is comfortable, now let's say a meditator, he is comfortable with his meditation. Because one is comfortable with the meditation process and the experience of whatever the meditation brings, the person enters into and exits from the jhanas with ease, for example.
Mhm.
Why is that? Because of past experience, past karma. Isn't it? It is because of past karma.
Mhm.
Right? Past experience is past karma.
Karma, yeah.
You know, anything that is experienced or anything that has been experienced through the jhavanas is past karma. Right? That is where then the person is more comfortable to walk in. Right? If there is hesitance, then it also affects. You know, you think, oh, I don't know how to meditate. I don't think I can meditate. I don't think I can sit for long. Then there is hesitance. That affects the meditation at hand. Again, the past karma, but only at the time of its manifestation. Do we understand? Bill, you look a bit confused. Noah, are you in jhana there? You feel like you're...
Yeah.
I wish, Bhante.
All right. So shall we move on then? Right. Guide to para 8. The object is called slight, etc. In the process, with a slight object, from 4 to 9 Atita Bhavangas will pass initially, and no jhavanas will arise. The determining chitta will occur 2 or 3 times, after which the cognitive process will subside into the Bhavanga. Depending on the number of Atita Bhavangas, there are still 6 types of process with a slight object. The kind of process is also called Bhante Pannavamsa, a course ending with determining, right? The very slight object. The object is called very slight when it enters the avenue of sense, as it is on the verge of ceasing and, after having passed, is unable to survive until the arising of the determining consciousness. In that case, there is merely vibration of the life continuum, but no arising of the cognitive process. Understood? What is not clear? Is it understood? Okay, let's go back to slide.
Bhante, can I ask a question? You say that very slight object, when you have very slight objects, you still have cognitive process, yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Now you said there's no cognitive process. There's no arise. Oh no, in the what it says in the write up.
Let's go through it again, Damsiri.
Okay.
The object is called slight. Back to guide to para 8, please.
Mm-hmm.
Right. In the process with a slight object, from 4 to 9 Atita Bhavangas will pass initially, and no jhavanas will arise. The determining chitta will occur 2 or 3 times, after which the cognitive process will subside into Bhavanga. Depending on the number of Atita Bhavangas, there are 6 types of process with a slight object. This kind of process is also called Bhante Pannavamsa, a course ending with determination. These sorts of consciousnesses are very, very weak, right? Are in cases not even sort of, you don't even know that they have arisen. Because why? There is no jhavana process, right? There is no proper impulsion of the object through the mind, right? It is almost as if, let's say, for example, you know, you're sort of in the motion of swinging your hand through the air, you feel the air slightly, but you will never be able to grab hold of the air. It is such kind of a process. Do you understand what I mean? You feel it while the swing is there, but only slightly, but you will not be able to materialize or really yoke anything from it. Not like where there is a javana process involved, right? Let's move down. A very slight object, which is even weaker. The object is called very slight when it enters the avenue of sense as it is on the verge of ceasing. The avenue of sense as it is on the verge of ceasing. Very, very weak, right? After having passed, is unable to survive until the arising of the determining consciousness. In that case, they are merely vibration of life continuum, but no arising of cognitive process, right? The object does not even stand a chance within the mind, right? It does not even stand a chance within the mind. Remember that these processes happen so fast, right? Happen so fast. It is still a cognitive process. Even the bhavanga is a cognitive process.
Process, yeah, okay.
Right? Even the bhavanga is a cognitive process. However, when it comes to a chittaviti, these are all called chittavitis, regardless of whether there is proper action or not, regardless of whether there is a tadalambana process or not, it is all called a object, a chittaviti, right? Let's go down to the chart. Take a look at the chart. The very slight objects, let's start from the slight objects. You see, they are within the slight objects, depending upon, now these objects which go down from slight downward, they are very, very weak. And when it comes to the very slight objects, it is nothing. But those poor attempts of an object to sort of grapple onto consciousness, it doesn't even grapple, right? So it is that kind of a thing, right? And this is because the object is not able to, or it does not make a significant impact. Now moving down, the fourfold presentation of objects, right? Page number 162. Any questions? Yes, Padma.
Is it my turn?
Padma.
No, can I ask you? Now, I just want to know the significance of, now there's Tadalambana only in two of the, or only in one. But when there's no Tadalambana, how does, is there no filing? As you said that Tadalambana was almost as if you are filing something at the end of and finishing it off.
Yeah.
So if that process doesn't take place, is there no memory, and doesn't it get into your system? That sort of object.
The Tadalambana helps in a complete evaluation and close of that specific subject.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Of that specific subject. When it comes to a process which does not have Tadalambana, because of the javana, there will be an impact. But because there is no Tadalambana, there will be no full impact.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Right? So karma will be produced as long as there is a javana process. Okay. Also, see how if 7 javanas do not arise, no javana arises. Right? If 7 javanas do not arise, no javana arises. Just like if two tadalambanas do not arise, no tadalambana arises.
Yeah.
This is almost as if what does that say about the object and the mind? This is wholly dependent upon the power of the object, not the mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
No, I will repeat.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
May I repeat, please?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Please. Yeah. Yeah.
What it means is this process, if we are thinking in this way, who is the bearer of the process? Or who is the person who's sort of carrying the weight of this process? The weight of this process is determined by the power of the object. That is why if two tadalambanas cannot arise, it will not arise. Meaning, if the product or if the object is not powerful enough to grapple that process, it will not arise at all. If the object is not powerful enough to grapple the javana process will not arise at all. Why? Because it's wholly dependent upon the object. Remember, what is the mind? The mind is that process which cognizes that energy itself. So almost the power of the object is the mind. If you understand what I'm trying to get at. The power of the object is the mind. Why? Who gave that power? The mind did. It is almost, and you cannot sort of really break it up. If the object arose in the mind, that is the mind itself. Samadhi is the mind. If you're listening to music, that's the mind. The action which is being performed is the mind. The energy which is at that moment is the mind. Do you get it?
Yeah. Okay.
Right? That is why this weight is wholly dependent upon, again, the power of the object. How has the object been perceived? Right?
May I recap on that? May I recap on that?
Don Susan. Padma, finish? Done?
Yes, I think I understand it now. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Susan?
So for example, if the power of the pizza, you like the example of pizza. So the power of the pizza comes on to my mind, but it's the energy of my mind that gives it the power. So it's also the power of the object, which is the pizza, but also the power of my mind that gives it the power. Is that what you mean? Could you give an example then of real life thing?
Pizza is the mind.
Okay. Pizza is the mind.
Right. Meaning the moment, for example, at that moment, for example, it's like, okay, you're watching something or you're eating something. You absolutely love what you're watching or eating. At that moment, it's like your grandchildren or children playing the PlayStation, completely enthralled in it. No other world beyond it, right? The mind at that moment, depending on the focus and all these other elements that we've spoken about, is the mind at that moment. It's not like we use this flashlight example. Remember, these are only examples for that time. We must understand the artistry of that example. It is not like a flashlight. The mind is not like a flashlight. Where you sort of on the switch or trigger the switch and it sort of sheds a light onto the wall or whatever object you want to see and you see it. It's not like that, right? That whole process is the mind. That is where anatma is experienced. The capacity where we think, okay, this is me, Bhante, who is teaching, or it's Mala who is listening to the Deshana, or whoever it is. all of these things that we sort of see, that is the attachment to the Panchupadanaskandha, which is manifested, which is also the mind. But it is not two separate individuals who are sort of helping in this maneuvering process. No, the mind is going through this process, and the mind works so fast that it sort of deludes itself in its own way to think, okay, there is this person and that person, this light, that light, all of these other things. But in one moment, that is where in one moment there is only one phenomena, and that phenomena is the mind. Question mark?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Mala?
Clear.
Bhante, with the great object, there's no registration. What are the implications when you don't have a registration in your chitta viti? Does it affect your remembering what happened? Or tell me what the implications are when you lose, when you don't have the two registration chittas?
When you do not have the two registration chittas, will it affect your remembrance? No, it shouldn't. I'm going to clarify this because I was thinking about this, and I'm going to tell you what I was thinking about. For example, in hypnotherapy, or even in past life remembrance, right? We go through experiences of the past in great detail, right? In great detail when, for example, something that you would, in a past life remembrance, not through hypnotherapy, through meditation, Atitansayana, right? So where you would sort of go backwards, remembering everything backwards, right? Is you feel everything. Now, let's say you remember yourself eating something, right? Let's say it's something. Doesn't matter what it is, it's something. You taste it. Let's say it's you as a baby drinking mother's milk. You had that feeling. Feeling as in Vedana, you know the taste. And it's quite a weird, surreal experience. But you're exactly at that moment. For me, what I'm thinking is, we have, and I'm going to clarify this from you. I'm going to talk to a friend and ask him what he thinks. Can we take and pass object of mind which is not very great and make it very great? Which should be possible. It should be possible, because as we go along, for example, you might not remember. If I am to ask you, what did you have last week on Monday? What did you have for dinner? You might remember it because we did the Abhidhamma class, but probably you don't remember, right? You probably don't remember, right? But however, if we were to meditate and go through that remembrance, you will remember, right? You will remember. But now that is what it is. The very great object, because of the Tadalambana, it's not about the memory mala. It is about the understanding of the object, the grasp of the object. Memory is constant. Right? Memory is something which is constant. It is just as you are breathing while I am breathing while I'm talking to you, you are breathing while you're talking to me. Just like the breathing happens involuntary, memory is also involuntary action. Right? Just as, for example, in the mind, action and result is also involuntary. That is why coronavirus is so stressful for all of us, because this involuntary action is now being made to be something which is something that we are inadvertently aware about. We are waiting until it ends. That is not a process that the mind is comfortable handing over to you, but we are doing it. Right? For example, if you're sick, you're waiting until the sickness fades, right? Because that it makes that whole experience of sickness daunting and something that you do not really like, right? Similarly, this cause and effect action is a part of the mind that we don't necessarily do, right? That we don't necessarily do. That is why some people find baking very, very, very difficult. Why? Because of that result action and result process, right? So remember, when the Tadalambana process there, it is regarding the understanding of the object, not memory. But memory, I'm going to double check this for you, but what I believe is at the moment is that memory is constant, and because of that, we should be able to tap into each and every memory with the right amount of mental power. Right? That is why mindfulness is something that really spikes up your memory because of that awareness of the present moment. Now, awareness is upon something which already is, right? And through techniques such as Atithamsanyana, and these meditation techniques, remembering techniques, hypnotherapy, you are able to really remember these minute details, right? Which we often wouldn't. So that would mean that memory is constant. It has nothing to do with memory.
Okay, thank you.
Bhante, I have a question. What happened? Okay. Now, considering that, I can't see you actually. Okay. Considering that, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Considering that you do not cognize an object completely in one thought process, you had to fire, or you had to carry out a bundle of thought process to cognize completely. All right. So we are considering only one of these many thoughts we are going to actually run in order to understand the object, or another. Yeah. So in the first one, you may have a slight object, but the subsequent one, you will go to a little bit better, greater objects. This is exactly what's happening when you want to see something. You immediately not recognize it. Then you look at it and you concentrate it, and you spend some time, moment more, then you recognize. So the process actually takes a combination of those thought processes here. Great, very great, and slight objects and things like that. Yeah.
Where did you get that from?
I reading some Sinhala Abhidhamma book, because in the I think we are going to do that when you do the mind consciousness, because they say that always one of these consciousness should be followed by mind consciousness, or followed by a number of mind conscious on the same object.
Yeah, there are different schools of thought regarding that.
Okay.
There are different schools of thought regarding that. It mentions that there are certain schools of thought which would say that the very slight, the slight and the very slight objects have no power whatsoever, right? Combination of chittas or chitta processes which would enable a person to clearly understand an object as it is when it happens through multiple processes, 5 to 7 processes, is enabled through it being a great or very great object.
Yeah, okay.
There are then other schools of thought which maintain that it is through the subjective support of many different variations of mind which would enable a process to be completed in terms of understanding the object, which now you just mentioned, Dhamma.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah.
Double check that for you.
Yeah.
See what, because I feel like if what you said, if the sort of the multiple cause a variation of great, very great, slight, and very slight processes are important when it comes to, specifically when it comes to Panchadwara Vachanviti, right? Because its attention is important because it is that data that we process.
Yeah.
If that is so, coming to a conclusion with data which has not been taken or which has not been properly unclear data, processing a conclusion regarding an object through unclear data should not be so clear.
Yeah.
Right? Let me check. I believe the first one, meaning it should be great or very great. But of course, when it comes to the mind, it's a different conversation altogether.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Panchadwara Vajanviti, what I remember learning is that it is a very great or a great process which really leads to the proper conclusion. So arriving at a proper conclusion with regards to what a specific object is. Right? But yes, of course, now, even as I am speaking to you, there are many things in the background. Right? Yeah. As I'm now looking at you, Dhamma, there are other people on the chat doing different things, but I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm looking and focusing at you. Right? But there should be a way that I am able to then, just because I was looking at you at this moment, I should be able to think back to say, okay, maybe this person wasn't really focusing that much while I was speaking to Dhamsiri. You know?
Yeah.
So I think that is possible. Let me double check that for all of us and come back to you.
The reason why I asked this one, because in the modern science, you can actually regress you. They do it in criminology. Yeah. You know, they can regress you and go back to the scene and try to capture some of the sceneries you have not actually cognized, but just noted in the side of the mind, you know. So in investigation, actually they do it in United States, they do it in Russia and those places. Yeah
Absolutely
yeah
those are hypno techniques which can be used to regress a person back to that moment with a sense of awareness to greater detail. You know, that is the right thing I was having in my mind while telling also Dhamsiri, the ability of a person, or you know, taking a person to greater details of that we might have missed.
Yeah
You know, and even for example, when it is, if we are working on, or if we are working with a person who has been sexually abused, for example, you know, and if the person has not properly healed, we do not use techniques such as, for example, the body scan with people who are victims of, because it ends up being a trigger for that person to remember the abuse that that person has undergone
and re-experience.
Yes, that part of the body. So yes, there can be, that's why I believe that, you know, a weak object can be looked at through the mind and made into a great object.
You
know? Let's move on and come in.
Yeah
All right, any other questions that anyone else has? Devika, yes, you can unmute yourself.
Bhante, now looking at these Chitta Vittis, just came to my mind, some children, you know, why do they talk about the past life? How do they, is it because they had a very great object and then in passing, how do they talk about the past life? That while I was listening to you, you know, that came into my mind. Right now, there is a big story going on about the Indian astronaut, the lady astronaut who crashed. There's a child in Sri Lanka who's talking about the experience. Yes, really.
So something that Lady Seado says, and I spoke about Lady Seado before, and something that Lady Seado says on how he explains this recollection of past lives, which some children experience when they're young, and the reasons to which people do forget their past lives. He says that the experience of the mother's womb, he says, is one of the is the most prominent contributing factor for the loss of past life memory. Apparently, because with the subtlety of the sense faculties, with the subtlety of the sense faculties and its inability to sort of see, hear, smell, taste, and do all of these things, and slowly as you develop, the experience of being in the womb is such a transformative experience to such a high aspect, regard. No, it's a very transformative experience because of the peace that is experienced by the growing child, that it makes a child forget about what was experienced before that, right? In the Tripitaka, it mentions that devas do remember their past lives, but they too often forget about their past lives. Why? Not because of the experience. Now, they do not come from a womb, isn't it? Apparently, they forget about their past life because as they are sort of born into those places, the pleasure, the beauty that they experience is so dynamically beautiful that, you know, they don't want to focus on anything else. You know, it is like a moment of gluttony. You know, for example, the takeout has arrived. Now everyone in the house is excited. They forget about everything else, and now it's all about finishing the takeout, right? It's that moment when you're so taken aback by that object which is presented that you forget. That is what Lady Sayadaw mentions with regards to why people do not remember the past lives. That is what I can say, Devika, because, you know, I'm not a person who can say anything else. I can only say one person like Lady Sayadaw has mentioned. Other than that, the Buddha does not specifically speak on it as I remember. So that is what all we have.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So if you want to remember your past lives, you know, you just have to meditate. And actually, past life remembering is not such a deep state of meditation. You know, a lot of people remember it as they, you know, it is not such a high state of meditation. A lot of people do experience past life regression quite easily. You know, it's just a matter of a bit of commitment, at least a little bit more than maybe we are putting in. All right, so let's move.
Okay.
Let's move on. 4-4 presentation of objects. As in the I-door, so in the ear-door, etc. Thus, in all the 5 doors, the 4-4 presentation of objects should be understood in due order in the 4 ways known as: 1, the course ending with registration, which is the very great object; the course ending with javana; the course ending with determining; and the futile course, which is really, what is a futile course? It's all really atita bhavanga, right? It is so weak, it can only measure up to really a bit of vibration. That is it. Guide to para 10. Thus, in all the 5 doors, etc., when these 4 courses are divided by way of subtypes, there are altogether 15 kinds of sense door cognitive process. Since each of these can occur in all the 5 sense doors, this makes a total of 75 sense door processes, right? 75 sense door processes. There are 7 modes and 14 different states of consciousness in the cognitive process. In detail, they are accordingly 54 in the 5 doors, according to the 54, right? Meaning it can arise It can arise in each of the 5 doors, so you multiply, right? Guide to para 11, there are 7 modes, etc. The 7 modes in which the process chittas occur are 5 door adverting, sense consciousness, one of the 5, receiving, investigating, determining, javana, and registration. The 14 states of consciousness are obtained by taking the javana 7 times and registration twice. The 54 chittas that occur in the 5 door process comprise all the sense sphere chittas. Is that understood? Is that clear? All right. Right. Now we are going on to Manodwara Bhajanaviti. Manodwara Viti. Right. Before we move on, do we have any questions with regards to this part that we have concluded?
Bhante, can I ask a question, please?
Yes, Lucky. I'm sorry, I did not see you before. Sorry. Yes.
It's all right. Now, you said javanas have to be always 7, but I read somewhere that when a person is dying, there will only be 5 javanas. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. With regards to an object within, which is not a chutiviti, you will experience, or you will have to experience 7 javanas for that object, right?
Yes.
So it is really, when we speak about it, we speak about it 5 to 7 javanas, right?
Right. Yes.
There is also mention about, no. So it's 5 to 7 javanas, but when it comes to the 5 sense dovitis, it is always 7. It is always 7, right?
Okay,
Remember that the dying process is a weak process on its own as well.
Yes,
right?
Bhante.
It is a weak process on its own as well. But what do we then say about weak? You know, what does it mean by weak? By weak, what it means is when a person dies, it is like a beggar. You know, it is like a you know, beggar. You know, you give what you take. You receive what is given, kind of a thing, right? And at that moment, sounds like a monk as well. So, at that moment, what is given to the mind because of the desperation. Now, this is a mundane instance, because of the desperation of the moment, because of the weakness of the mind. That is why whatever the insecurity is, whatever the akusala is, whatever the kusala is grappled onto and sort of multiplied. So that is why, for example, if there is a little bit of hate, you sort of hear stories about people being reborn in the hills and, you know, all these places. Why? There's a multiplication or sort of a dramatization of that moment, because it is almost as if you're falling into something, you know, completely engulfed in that object, because at that moment it is really like, you know, a monkey trying to sort of jump from one tree to the other, sort of really holding on to that, thinking that that is the only branch at reach. That is really something like what is in the dying process. That is why when we often, within these forums, when we talk about death, I kind of emphasize on the fact of don't be afraid of death, which is, you know, easier said than done. But easier said than done. But we must get used to not being afraid of it, but rather embracing it, because it is in that way that attitudinal change. Because of course, I've mentioned this, you know, religion has really demonized the experience and the process of dying and death, right? We do not really, and of course I blame it on the Catholics, of course, and the Abrahamic religions, but we have really demonized it to such an extent, because that is how people were controlled. That is how we got people, not we, but people were controlled to sort of give money to the churches, or to sort of pay their way into salvation and to build all the things. History has played a lot, and that has really done us a lot of harm than good, because this process of dying, death, even in Sri Lankan households and families, even actually, even my mother would not like the word to be of death to be uttered at home. It is absolutely unlucky. It is not something that we speak about. That is the demonization, right? And that is wholly something that we must go against, because it is that process which sort of destabilizes our last moments, right? That destabilizes our last moments. So yes. So have I answered your question, Lucky?
Yes. Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So remember also in the Majjhima Nikaya, the fourth sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya, it's the Buddha says, wherever you want to go, you can go. If you want to go to the high heavens, you can do so. If you want to attain Nibbana, you can do so. It is only where that need is supported by the right Shraddha, Sati, Chaga, Panna, then one is able to sort of go to that place. So really, it is in willing to go to that place and supporting that will to appear in that place. And you will get it, because it is exactly what happens even in Akusala. You you have some sort of tanha to something, and you really do get it, in its most intimate way, right? In its most intimate way, you do get it. And in the similar way, you can convert that into something which is good as well, which is, aspiring for something which is wholesome and something which is good, right? All right, moving on. Any other questions? No questions? Lovely. Okay. Something before I forget. For the Paticcasamuppada, which is going to happen on the 9th, how can so it is a Sinhala course, so I'm sorry for those of you who do not speak Sinhala, but don't worry, we have English courses coming up which would be similarly exciting. How you should prepare is with all the distinctions of the different types of the Paticcasamuppada that we experience. Now, for example, Avijja. Do some research into what Avijja is. Right, do some research into what Avijja is. And when you come into Avijja, now we know ignorance, the word ignorance we have gone over. Yes, it would go into delusion, the aggregate of delusion within the chittas, right? Do some research in that, prepare yourself. And ask Bhante questions, don't let him off easy. Right, don't let him off easy, because if you do, then he will slowly sort of go, he will think, oh, this crowd is, you can satisfy them easily, so he will not really go deep. So, make sure you do ask questions and, hint to him that we are not normal people, yeah? That we are here for business, yeah? So make sure you do that. So come prepared. And how you prepare yourself is Avijja Pachya Sankhara. What is Avijja? Right? You don't need to know the connection between Avijja and Sankhara. He will explain. But you do your background work to know what is Avijja, what is Sankhara. Right? Do you understand? Right? Know what the distinctions are. Right? That is important. So prepare yourself in that way and sort of attend the Paticcasamuppada. Right? So, the Mindo process, Manodwara Viti, the limited Javana process. When a clear object enters the avenue of the Mindo, then the vibration of the life continuum, Mindo adverting, Javanas, and at the end of the Javanas, registration resultants all take place. Following this, there is subsidence into the life continuum. Again, when a clear object enters the avenue of the Mindo, then the vibration of life continuum, Mindo adverting, javanas, and at the end of the javanas, registration resultants all take place. Following this, there is substance into life continuum. In the case of an obscure object, now something that I must mention is, now to those of you, and I am hoping that some of you, right, when it comes to the proper study of the Abhidhamma Sangha, the Abhidhamma Sangha is really these sort of Pali verses that you see, right? So really you complete the study of the Abhidhamma Sangha when you are able to, or if you are to study in that way, if you are to memorize all the Pali verses with regards to that. So, you know, that is something that the Samaneras and we all had to do before we studied the Abhidhamma Sangha. So I don't know, you know, if you can do it, right, that would sort of, you know, complete the study of the Abhidhamma Sangha. And, you know, and these things you can just as much as, for example, you have chanted the Metta Sutta, or the Mangal Sutta, or the Ratana Sutta, right? And people in Burma, they chant the Patthana, right? Through chanting, you can sort of, you know, sort of get used to these things. So maybe, you know, even as a part of your daily recollections, you know, you can sort of chant the Abhidhamma Sangha. So I'm just giving you something to contemplate if you can do it, right? So that you can sort of memorize it. And that would be, so really, that's that paragraph. So usually the teachers or proper teachers would only need that paragraph, really, right? And then they would know what is within this section to explain, right? All right, let's go on. In the case of an obscure object, there is subsistence into the life continuum at the end of the javanas without giving rise to the registration resultants. Guide to para 12. The Mindo process. When a cognitive process appears in one of the sense doors, the two doors are actually involved, the physical sense door and the mind door, which is the bhavanga from which the cognitive process emerges. Again, when a cognitive process occurs in one of the sense doors, two doors are actually involved, the physical sense door and the mind door, which is the bhavanga from which the cognitive process emerges. What is called a mind-door process is a cognitive process that occurs exclusively through the mind door, without any admixture of the sense doors. This kind of process is also called, for the sake of clarity, a bare mind-door process or a Suddha Manodvara Viti. Clear? Clear? All right. So what is the part of the mind-door process? It is the bhavanga which you see before those respective consciousnesses which go into the sense object. That is the manodvara part, right? That is the manodvara part of the 5 sense door processes. Understood? Okay. The mind-door process includes both the limited or sense sphere process, paritta viti, dealt with in para 12 to para 13, and the cognitive process in absorption pertaining to the sublime Mahagata and the supramundane Lokotara attainments, dealt with in paragraph 14 to paragraph 16. The limited or sense sphere mind-door process is itself twofold. That consequent is twofold. One, that consequent a 5-door process, panchadvara dvaranu bandhaka, and an independent process, visumsiddha. Just as when a gong is struck once by a baton, the gong sends forth a continuous stream of reverberations. So when one of the 5 sense doors has been impinged upon once by a sense object, after the 5-door process has ceased, the past sense object comes into range at the mind door and sets off many sequences of mind door processes, because these cognitive processes come as a sequel to the 5-door process. They are known as consequent processes. They are counted as 5-fold by way of the 5 sense door processes which they follow. Is that clear? We are going to come to it, don't worry. Right? We are going to come to it. I'm going to explain. Lady Seattle explains that it is in these consequent processes that distinct recognition of the object occurs. Such recognition does not occur in a bare 5-door process itself. An I-door process, for example, is followed first by a conformational mind door process, which reproduces in the mind door the object just perceived in the sense door process. Then comes a process grasping the object as a whole. Then a process recognizing the color. Then a process grasping the entity. Then a process recognizing the entity. Then a process grasping the name. Then a process recognizing the name. Please mark it, have a star or highlight that part. That part is very important, right? That whole paragraph is quite very important. The process grasping the object as a whole is the mind door process, perceiving as a whole the forms repeatedly perceived in individual frames by the 2 preceding processes. The original sense door process and the conformational mind door process. This process exercises a synthesizing function, fusing the perception of distinct shots of the object into the perception of unity, as in the case of whirling fire band perceived as a circle of fire. It is only when this has occurred that recognition of color is possible. When the recognition of the color occurs, one recognizes the color. I see blue. When the recognition of the entity occurs, one recognizes the entity or shape. When the recognition of the name occurs, one recognizes the name. Thus, Lady Sayadaw asserts, it is only when a recognitional process referring to one or other specific feature occurs that one knows, I see this or that specific feature, right? I see this or that specific feature. Also remember here, the I is so entrenched and rooted within the process of cognition that it is not a separate factor from the root of cognition itself or the process of cognition, right? It is as if the same mold and the same product, where this sort of I factor is interlinked and intermixed into that same process of cognition. Understood? Right. We are going to explain that next week. Are we having a class next week? We are having a class next week. Yeah? Yeah. Abhidhamma does not stop. All right. My favorite time to terrorize all of you. All right. So second one. An independent mind or process occurs when any of the 6 objects enters the range of cognition entirely on its own, not as a consequence of an immediately preceding sense door process, not consequently as an immediately preceding sense door process. The question may be raised how an object can enter the range of the mind door independently of a proximate sensory impingement. Do you understand what a proximate sensory impingement is? right? Without the object being near you, right? Ladies are the sites, various sources, through what was directly perceived earlier, or by inference from what was directly perceived, through what was learned by oral report, or by inference from what was learned by oral report, on account of belief, opinion, reasoning, or reflective acceptance of a view. Now, this is, you know, when it comes to belief, that is why any person can really be made to believe anything, right? A person can really be made to believe anything. It all comes down to the effectiveness of its articulation. That is why the Buddha says that one should endeavor to not come in close contact with anyone who has or who is a niyata mithya drushtika person, or a person who has permanent wrong views, because these people are so articulate on their wrong views that they can easily sort of shift one's belief into something which is completely not true, right? Completely not true. All right, we are going to stop there for today, and we are going to go over that whole section starting with the mind-over process. Make sure you read it, right? Make sure you read it. And that process, that part where I told you to highlight, I want you to, in your notes, make sure that you have sort of a diagram, from an arrow diagram or something that you want to, in any way that is understandable to you, sort of have a depiction of what processes follow what, right? And that is important, right? So thank you very much. I will see you all next week.
Bhante, one question. At what time do we have these classes on Saturday, starting from 9? What is some part of class?
1:30.
Sorry?
1:30.
12:30? 1:30. Okay, Bhante.
What time did we have the usual sessions on Saturday when we did the, was it at 1 or 1:30?
It's at 1, I think. No? Was
it at 1?
Yeah, I think it was 1.
Okay.
Yeah, it was at 1, but I think it's too early. 1:30 will be better.
Okay, so it's at 1:30. Okay.
Okay, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante.
I will send the email to all of you.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in. I will see you all next week. Take care and good night. And if you have any questions, do write them down and bring it up at the session. Right?
Thank you, Bhante. Tirvan Sarnai.
Thank you, Bhante. Tirvan Sarnai.
Everyone, Sarnai Bhante.
All right.